Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this morning's webinar all about the pension assessment in Sage 50 Payroll. My name's Alice and I'll be presenting the webinar this morning, and I am joined by my colleague Duncan, who's working behind the scenes on the questions panel. So let's look at what we're going to cover in today's session then. So I'll start with an introduction, so a little bit of a recap of your pension duties as an employer and what the pension assessment is. We'll then move on to running the pension assessment and how to navigate it, and also identify any changes in the current period. We'll then move on to postponement, so what this is and how to apply it to your employees in the pension assessment. And last but not least, a look at processing opt-in and opt-out requests, which you might receive from your employee and the pension provider. So as I said, I would like to begin with a little recap of the steps of your pension duties as an employer. For anyone who missed our previous pensions webinar, so if you employ at least one person, you are an employer and you do have duties to carry out when it comes to pensions. You've got 4 automatic enrolment duties, which include choosing a pension scheme and getting this set up with your chosen pension provider, working out who to put into that pension scheme or assessing your employees and whether or not they're going to be eligible for automatic enrolment. You'll need to write to your staff to explain how automatic enrolment applies to them, otherwise known as sending pension correspondence. And you also need to declare your compliance, so basically declaring that your workplace pension is compliant and all of the information that you've provided is accurate. And if you would like more detail or advice on these 4 steps, the pensions regulator does have all of that information for you. I've just linked an article at the bottom there as well. So even after you do these 4 duties, you do still have ongoing duties as an employer. These are to assess your employees' age and wage each time you pay them to see if they need to be put into the pension scheme. And you would normally do this manually or via the pension assessment. Every 3 years, you'll also need to carry out your re-enrolment duties, such as re-enrolling any employees who've left your scheme. You'll need to continue paying into your pension scheme. And you also need to manage requests as well to join or leave the scheme and keep records of this too. And as I will be talking about them quite a lot during this webinar, I do want to just remind you of the worker types as well. So you've got entitled, eligible and non-eligible. So entitled employees are aged 16 to 74, working in the UK, earning below £6,240. And these employees have got a right to join your pension scheme. Eligible employees are aged 22 to state pension age, working in the UK, earning above £10,000. These employees must be automatically enrolled into your scheme. And then you've got non-eligible as well. So these are for employees aged 16 to 21 or state pension age to 74, working in the UK, earning above £10,000, or aged 16 to 74 and working in the UK as well, earning between £6,240 and £10,000. And these non-eligible employees have got a right to opt into your scheme. And we will be talking about that a little bit more kind of further into the webinar. As I said, you would normally have to assess the employees manually, but that's where the pension assessment comes in. So what is the pension assessment? Well, it's part of the pensions module for Sage 50 Payroll, and it's designed to make your pension duties as an employer quicker and easier. It is an additional module to subscribe to in Sage 50 Payroll. But the pension assessment, it assesses your employees automatically and assigns a worker category to them. And if an employee is eligible for automatic enrolment, it will automatically assign your pension scheme to them. It also allows you to easily filter and view any changes that have happened each period, automatically calculates the employee and employer pension contributions for the current period, and allows you to efficiently manage opt-in and opt-out requests, as well as process postponement. So it's a great option and ultimately saves you a lot of time, especially if you've got quite a few employees to assess. It takes a lot of that kind of manual tasks away. And you might be wondering whether or not you've got the pensions module. Well, this is one of the ways that you can check. So if you simply click on the pension assessment option in Sage 50 Payroll, you'll get one of these come up. So if Payroll prompts you to take a backup, like that screenshot on the left, your licence does include the pensions module. Or if it asks you to subscribe, like the screenshot on the right, then your licence does not include it. You would have to subscribe to the pensions module to use the options. And let's look at when you would run the assessment as well in your pay run. So the pension assessment would be run after entering the payments for your employees, but before your pre-update reports. And the option can be found from your payroll tasks, or if you're a process map user, you can see it has its own step there as shown on the screenshot. So now that we know when to run the assessment and we've had a little bit of a recap of those pension duties, let's move on to the next section, which is running the pension assessment, and this will include a demonstration as well. So not too much to do in terms of running the actual assessment itself, but it is important to make sure that you've checked your process date is correct first of all, so the date of your next pay run, and at step 2, you've entered the payments for your employees. These first 2 steps are really important in making sure that payroll uses the correct payments and correct dates in the assessment and ultimately assigns the correct worker category to your employees. After this, step 3, you'll click on the pension assessment option and it will prompt you to take a backup. Very important to take a backup at this stage as the pension assessment does make changes to your employees based on their eligibility. So having that backup means you've got that kind of safety net there. You can restore that if you need to get back to where you were. And last step is to view the pension assessment report. It will load up after you've taken that backup and you'll see something that looks a little bit like this. So all of the information is on one page. You've got contributions and totals on the right, which have been automatically calculated, as well as the employee status and worker type too. But before I ramble on too much, let's just dive straight into the demo and we'll run the pension assessment. I've just brought up my payroll. I'm logged into my company, and first thing I'm going to do is check my process date. The first period I'm going to be showing you is actually going to be the 31st of May. So I pay monthly and I pay on the last day of each month. So for the first demo, that'll be the 31st of May. And next thing that I would do is enter the payments for my employees. But for the sake of the webinar, I have already done that for May. Everyone's the same each month mostly, but I do have a few changes this period. So I've got a new starter this month, employee number 14. And I've also already added on someone who's due to start next month in June as well. I'm going to highlight my employees, but I am going to miss out that employee starting next month. They don't need to be assessed just yet. And I'm just going to move on to that next step, which was clicking on the pension assessment. Now remember, if you are a process map user, the pension assessment does have its own option in there. But I'm just going to stick with the payroll tasks and click on the pension assessment. So this is where it prompts you to take a backup. I am going to do this at this point. So I'm just going to click through that backup. Let's just call it pre-assessment May. Just to make sure that my data is all backed up there. And after you take that backup, you can see it goes through and assesses your employees. And yep, once it's been successful, that pension assessment will load up. So it's looked at and assessed each employee and assigned a worker category to them. And this is what it looks like. So on the left, we can see employees who are currently selected. They've got a tick in the box. We've actually got a tick box at the top where we can kind of select and deselect everyone at once as well. The next column, it looks blank, but if you just keep looking down, we've actually got 2 employees with a little black flag in there. And this column is actually flagging employees who've had a change this period. And if I hover over that flag, I can see details on what those changes are. So employee number 7, I can see their worker category has changed this period. And if I just go along and look at that worker type, I can see they're entitled. So that must have changed this period. And employee number 14 as well, and this is my new starter. I can see the payroll recognises that as well. So this employee's been assessed and they've been assessed as eligible. So that means they've been automatically enrolled into my pension scheme. And if we just go along as well, that worker type is eligible and the status is showing as auto-enrolled. So those flags let you know of any changes this period. You've then got the employee's name, their employee number as well, and their NI number. Pretty straightforward there. But then we've got the worker type and the status columns. So a fair amount of my employees are eligible, but I do have a mix in here. So I've got some employees who aren't. Employee number 6 and 11, for example, are non-eligible. And if you are wondering why a particular employee's being given a certain worker type, you can actually hover over this little magnifying glass. So this will provide more detail on the employee and also the next steps as well. I can see employee number 6 is non-eligible with qualifying earnings of about £1,744. So they are earning more than enough to be eligible. But because they're 73 years old, they are over state pension age and too old to be eligible, so they therefore fall into the non-eligible category. And if I just go down to employee number 11 as well, again, they are earning the same as employee 6, so they're earning more than enough, but they're actually only 21, so they're too young to be eligible. They need to be 22 to meet the age. And notice in the next steps as well, they do have the option to opt in if they wish. Same goes with employee number 6. So although they're not automatically enrolled, they can still opt into this scheme. And a few more examples as well. Let's say employee number 8 and 9. So these employees are entitled. And again, if I hover over the magnifying glass, I can see that they are the correct age to be into the eligible category. So they're both between 22 and state pension age, but they're not earning enough, so only about £350 a month. And this means they fall into the entitled worker type. And if you just notice in the next steps, these employees do have a right to join the scheme if they wish, which is just noted there. And a few more employees I do want to point out. Employee number 12, it just says this employee's opted out. So you can see that's what their status is set to. And if I hover over that magnifying glass, if they do change their mind and they want to opt back into the scheme, they do have that option. And employee number 13, so they're showing as cessation. They chose to leave the scheme after the opt-out period. But next steps say that they can opt in again if they wish. So if you are unsure about the employee status or what they can do, this does provide more detail on that. Next columns, I've got the name of my pension scheme. So mine's just called My Pension Scheme for this demo. We've then got the employee pension contributions, the employer pension contributions, and a refund column as well. So this is for situations where the employee wants to opt out and receive a pension refund, and that will show in here, and we will come back to that a little bit later. And last but not least, on this main section, we've also got totals as well. So that is the main section of the report. But in the top left, you'll notice there are buttons to opt in or join, opt out or leave, and postpone as well. So I will come back to those a little bit later. And I would also like to point out in the top right corner, you've got the option to filter your employee list. So let's say you've got quite a lot of employees and you want to see only the employees who've changed this period. You've got a selection of filters that you can apply to the list. And I could actually select that I only want to see people who've changed this period, apply that filter, and then I've then got those employees showing there. So that's a quick way to kind of filter down your employee list. You've also got things like who's opted out, who's opted in, and the worker types as well. So if you do want to break that down, you can. Let me just set that back to all. And another good thing, if you've got a lot of employees, you can search for people in here as well. So let's say I can pop in people's name. I can also pop in their NI numbers as well, and that brings up results. So not only is assessing your employees each time you pay them one of your pension duties, but so is keeping records of who is joining and leaving the scheme. So on that note, last thing I want to point out in the pension assessment for now are the options in the bottom right corner. So you can email, you can print or export as a CSV if you need. This is just a way of keeping record of the pension assessment and the changes. I would normally print it as a PDF. So I can just click on print, I can save that as a PDF there, and that's actually going to look a little bit something like this. So it prints off that main section of the pension assessment. I would advise keeping record of each period's pension assessment. Even if there haven't been big changes, at least then you've got a good understanding of what's happening with everyone and you are keeping records as well. But the pension assessment, it's a great place to see all of that information in one place. And as I said, it does take away that manual burden of assessing all of your employees individually and manually assigning the scheme as well. So I just want to have a bit of a recap of what we looked at there in the pension assessment and where you can find all the information. So the little flag icons, you can hover over these to see changes to employees this period. But if you do have a lot of employees, you can actually filter that list even further or search for their name or NI number to bring up the results. You can view the worker category and status of an employee. And if you hover over the magnifying glass, you can see more details on the employee as well as the next steps as well. The pension assessment also automatically calculates the employee and employer pension contributions with totals, and there is also a refund column. And in the top left, you've got the options to process opt-in or opt-out requests and postpone your employee's automatic enrolment as well. And speaking of those options in the top left, that does lead us nicely onto the next section, which is processing postponement. So I'm going to go through a little bit of an overview of what this is and also what opting in and opting out is before we go back into the demo. So as you know, an eligible employee is automatically enrolled into your pension scheme in the pension assessment. But for a variety of business reasons, you can actually postpone an employee's automatic enrolment by up to 3 months. You can only postpone it from your duty start date, a staff member's first day of employment, if you've had new starters, for example, or the date a staff member first becomes eligible for automatic enrolment, so if their worker categories changed, for example. And postponement is commonly used to delay automatic enrolment for temporary staff that you might have, say over the summer months or over Christmas, who are going to be working with you for a limited amount of time, or used for staff members who are beginning work on a probationary period. So that's kind of a little overview of postponement. And while we're on the slides, we'll take a look at it, opting in and opting out as well. So opting in or joining the scheme, I did touch on this before, is for employees who are non-eligible or entitled. Non-eligible employees have the option to opt in, and they can do this by writing to you, the employer. If they do opt in, the employer must contribute also. Whereas entitled employees who join the scheme, again, they'll write to you, but the employer can choose to contribute. And this all depends on which worker category they fall into. Opting out of the scheme, so this is when the employee decides to leave your scheme within a month of being enrolled. Eligible employees who are automatically enrolled must request this through the pension provider, and the pension provider will then inform you of the request, which you can then process in Sage 50 Payroll. An employee can still leave your scheme after the opt-out period though. That's when they would then show as cessation in the assessment, as they've left the scheme outside of the opt-out period. And linking to opting out as well, a little bit on pension refunds. So you must provide a full refund of any contributions if the employee's opted out within the opt-out period, which is 1 month. And if the employee's left the scheme outside of the opt-out period, but a refund is still applicable, you could still process a pension refund, but this will be through enter payments instead, not through the pension assessment, as it won't allow it. But do double check the refund policies with your pension provider. This can differ depending on who you're with. And regarding refunds and opting people out, I have linked more information on the slides, which provides information on the refunds and how to manually refund through Enter Payments as well, should your employee have missed the opt-out period and still need that refund. But let's dive straight back into the demo. I'm going to show you opting in and opting out, as well as postponement. So I'm still in the pension assessment for May. I can see the only employees with a change are employee number 7 and 14 as well, who's my new starter. And a little top tip while I'm in here actually, so just at the top you'll notice you do have information showing you how many employees are currently in the pension assessment and what your process date is as well, so that might come in handy. But as part of my employer duties, I would need to write to employee 14 to let them know that they've been automatically enrolled and what that means for them. And that's known as sending pension correspondence. So employee number 14 will have the right to opt out if they wish, which they would then request through the provider. But that's my pension assessment done for me, so I'm just going to close that down. And at this point, I would just continue with my pay run as normal. So I would do my pre-update reports, upload my online pay slips and things, but for today, I am going to skip ahead and update the records. So I am just going to work through this wizard. Always take a backup at this point as well, and if you do need to get back to where you were. And that is all 14 of my employees now updated. Now let's pretend I've finished May, I've sent my FPS and things. I am going to change my process date to my next pay date, just to show you a few more things in the assessment. So my next pay date will be the 30th of June. I'm just going to show you something else. And I am going to highlight my new starter as well. So they've joined us in June, so I can now include them in the assessment. And I've checked my process date. I'm now going to go into Enter Payments. So everyone stays the same most months, to be honest. There is just a few people I need to check. So I need to check employee number 7. They're actually due a pay rise, so they've had a change in their contract. So that's going to go up to £815. So I've just changed that in there for them. And I just want to check my new employee as well, just to check that their salary is in there. There we go. Yeah, employee number 15, all good to go. Great, so now I can move on to my pension assessment. I'll just do that from the payroll tasks again. And always take a backup here as well, remember. Let me just call that before assessment, June. And as I click finish and that backup's successful, we'll see it assesses my employees there and it brings up June's pension assessment. Here we go. So I can see a few flag icons on the left again, so there have been changes to the employees. If we just have a look at those. So again, employee number 7, they've had a change to their worker category. And if I just go along there, we can see they're now non-eligible. So they were entitled, they're now non-eligible. And that's actually due to that pay rise that I gave them. So their contract changed, they're now getting paid £815, and that's made sure that they're now in the non-eligible category. So if they wanted to, the next steps would be to opt into the scheme. Employee number 11 as well, we've had a change there. So they've actually had their birthday, they've turned 22. And they've been reassessed this period, and because of that change in the wage, they are now eligible. So as a result, their worker category has changed to eligible, and they've been automatically enrolled into my pension scheme. And last change, so for my new employee, my new starter, the programme knows they're a new starter, has assessed them as eligible, and same as employee number 11, they've been automatically enrolled. Now, employee number 15, they're actually a temporary member of staff, so they're only going to be working with us for around 3 months over the kind of busier summer period. So what I would like to do for employee number 15 is postpone their automatic enrolment. I can postpone them for up to 3 months from their start date, and it is nice and quick to do this. So to postpone number 15, I'm going to select them just using that tick box, and just in the top I'm going to click on postpone. And all I need to do in here is just select the date that I want to postpone them until. Now notice if I click ahead 3 months, it only actually lets me go to the 6th of September. It doesn't let me postpone them beyond 3 months from their start date. So I'm going to select the 6th of September. So I've postponed them for the maximum amount of time that I can, and I just need to click on postpone. We get confirmation of that change, and I'll just click OK. This employee, they'll be leaving at the end of the beginning of September anyway, but if they were still employed at that point when that postponement date comes around, they would be reassessed at that point, and if they remained eligible, they would then be automatically enrolled. But that is how to postpone an employee. Reminder, that's for up to 3 months from their start date, your duty start date as an employer, or the start date of the date a staff member first becomes eligible for automatic enrolment. And we can see their status has now changed to postponed. So that is the first change I need to make this period. I do have a couple more to make. So employee number 7, this person's actually written to me and asked to opt into my pension scheme. So I need to process this. They've recently become non-eligible, as we can see by the little flag. So once they opt in, I as the employer will also need to contribute. So remember, non-eligible, the employer must contribute as well, but entitled, that's when the employer can choose to contribute. So I'm going to select them on the left, and I'm just going to use the opt-in/join option in the top left. In here, I just need to put in the date which I received the request from the employee, which was the 10th of June in this case. And I just need to select the scheme that they're opting into, which is just my pension scheme. And like me, if you notice that little red ring is still around the box, just click Tab on your keyboard. That kind of refreshes that box for you. And you would just need to click Opt In. You do also have the option of attaching that request from your employee as well, if you wish. So I'll click Opt In, again, confirmation of that change, and I'll click OK. We can see again that employee status is now changed to reflect that opt-in. And if I hover over that magnifying glass, I can see their enrolment date is set to the next relevant period, which is the 6th of July 2024. And last change I need to make this period is actually for employee number 14. So remember, this employee was automatically enrolled last month in May. They were an eligible new starter, and I sent my pension correspondence to them to let them know what this means for them. Since then, they've contacted the pension provider and they've actually opted out of the scheme, and I've received that request from Nest, my provider. So to process the opt-out, I'm just going to select the employee. This time I'll just click on opt-out/leave, and a little bit more options in here. I am just going to start by popping in that request received date, which is the 10th again. And you do also have the option of ticking if they've used an extension period at all. So this is for situations where the opt-out request isn't correct, and it allows you to extend the opt-out period for up to 6 weeks to allow the employee to complete the form correctly. So tick that if applicable. You've also got a tick box to refund the first month's contributions if they're opted out within the opt-out period, which is that 1 month. And when you tick that, you can see it automatically populates this box here with the employee's refund. So this is just the employee's contribution refund. The employer's would show on the main pension assessment screen. And also the employee's pay slip as well, that will show the correct split amount of the employee contribution refund and the employer's. Alternatively, if the refund's going to be processed outside of payroll by the pension provider, you can tick that box as well. And like the opt-in, you do have the option of attaching the opt-out notice that you've received from the pension provider. But I'm going to refund those the first month's contributions, and I'm just then going to click opt out. Confirmation of that change. So I'll click OK. The status has changed to opt out. And I can see that refund amount there on the right hand side as well. So this is the employee and employer refund combined. And if the employee did change their mind, next steps there, they can actually opt back into the scheme if they wish. So I've now successfully postponed employee number 15. I've opted in employee number 7. And I've opted out employee number 14. And they were the only changes that I needed to make this period. At this point, I am going to save a copy of the pension assessment report as a PDF again, just to keep record of those changes. So let me just do that now. I'll just pop that in here. Pension assessment, June 2024. And I'll just open that up to show you what that looks like as well. Let me just try and find that. There we go. Here we go. So this is my June assessment, again printed as a PDF. But yeah, definitely keep record of those changes. That is one of your ongoing duties as an employer. So at this point, I can now close the pension assessment, continue with June's payroll as normal, and yeah, that is the pension assessment. So I do want to finish on a little bit of a recap of what we've covered today. I know there was quite a bit of information in there. So when do you run the pension assessment? Well, this is after you've checked your process date and entered your payments, but before you run your pre-update reports. And you can run it from the process map or from your payroll tasks. It's nice and quick to postpone an employee as well who's eligible for automatic enrolment. You just need to select the employee, click the postpone option and enter the date you'd like to postpone them until. For opting in, you'll select the employee, but this time you'll click opt-in/join and enter the date that you've received the request from your employee, along with selecting the relevant pension scheme that you're opting them into. And for opting out, select your employee, click opt-out/leave and enter the date that you received the request. You also have the option of ticking whether the extension period's been used, to refund the first month's contributions, or alternatively, tick whether the refund's been instead paid directly by the pension provider, and then just click opt out. And just a reminder of the handouts as well, so all of the slides are available to download, and if you download the digital one, all of the links and things which I put at the bottom of the slides will be available to you as well. But that does bring us to the end of the main content for the pension assessment. Thank you so much for your time. But before we do wrap things up, I would like to go through a little bit of further support with you as well. So for webinars, me and Duncan do run these throughout the whole year for Sage 50 Payroll. As you can see, very pensions related this month. We have already had our Pensions the Basics webinar, but there's a recording available if you'd like to re-watch that. Got the pension assessment today. And if you are curious how pension contributions are calculated, we are running a pension calculations session, pension re-enrollment as well, or even sending your pension data through Pensions Data Exchange. So if you're interested in knowing anything more about those, definitely head to sage.co.uk/webinars or click register now on the handout to read more about them. And yeah, hopefully we'll see you all there. Got the Sage Help Centre as well. So here you can search the knowledge base, you can access support guides, demonstration videos, recordings of our webinars, and should you need to, you can get in touch and contact the experts as well. And this Help Centre is where all of the help articles which I've linked are from as well, so it is really handy. We also use that as Sage colleagues. And last but not least, Sage University. Here you can set up a free account. You can access e-learning and bite-sized learning as well. It's a great way to expand your knowledge on Sage 50 Payroll and other Sage products too, and you can even earn product certification on the back of that. But I would like to take this opportunity to thank you very much for your time this morning. I hope you've learned a thing or two about the pension assessment. And if you are leaving us now, remember that you can download the handouts and feel free to copy and paste the Q&A as well if you would like to keep any of those questions and answers for future reference. And last thing from me, there is a short survey that you'll get as you exit the webinar. If you do have just a moment to fill that out, me and Duncan would really appreciate that. We read all of the feedback and comments and take them on board for future webinars. But that's it for today's session. I can see there are still quite a few questions in the questions panel, definitely been keeping Duncan busy there. So I am going to go on mute just for a few moments to help with those last questions, and I'll be back in a few moments just to say goodbye. So I'll be back in a few minutes. Hello everybody, thanks for your patience there. It looks like me and Duncan have managed to answer the rest of those questions, so thanks again to Duncan for your help there. Just a reminder to everyone to keep an eye on your emails for a recording of the webinar coming through to you, and feel free to watch that as many times as you need. But yeah, I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Hopefully we'll see you on another webinar very soon, and on behalf of me and Duncan, we'll see you next time. Goodbye.